Today is Saturday, March the 12th, 2016, and you are listening to KPFZ 88.1 on your FM dial. We are broadcasting out of beautiful Lakeport, where you'll find the clearest air and the largest natural lake in California. I have to remind you, you have the views that are expressed here on this show are not the station's views. They're my views, and those of my engineer, today it's Andy, and my videographer, Allen Markowski. But today, they're also the views of Orlean Curley, published author, speaker, retired school teacher, president of the Northern California Eagle Forum, founded by Phyllis Schlafly. And the voice you are listening to is that of Al Duncan. And I'm bringing you the news behind the news and the story behind the story, hoping to convince you that reality is usually scoffed at and illusion is usually king. But in the battle for the survival of what is good, what is right, and what is just, it will be reality, and not illusion or delusion, that will determine what the future will bring. I'd like to remind you, we are a nonprofit radio station, and we exist on your gracious donations alone. So please, put your money where your mind is. You can send donations to KPFZ, P.O. Box 446, Lakeport, California, 95453. And be sure to let everybody know that you've heard it on Al Duncan, on the Al Duncan Show, News Behind the News. Now today's quote, and I have one, and I'd like for everybody to bear with me this morning. I'm doing this on my own, and today's quote: "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to have developed our plan for a one world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practice in past centuries." That quote is from David Rockefeller and was delivered in a Bilderberg meeting, Baden, Germany, June 1999. That is also the meeting where Bill Clinton was supposedly chosen as the next U.S. president, and where Margaret Thatcher was excommunicated by her elite handlers. This show will be posted on YouTube later on today. In the YouTube search bar, all you have to do is put in Al Duncan's News Behind the News, and a good label with that on that would be geoengineering or chemtrails. And you can actually watch the video of this show and see the video clips that I present. You can also reach me at alduncan@pacific.net. That's ALDUNCAN at PACIFIC.net. And I will include you in my email list so you can receive the articles I send out that expose the news behind the news. So let's get right into this show. I'm going to set the stage for Orlean by presenting the other side of this water crisis. I'll cover California, but also the world, why Orlean's message basically covers what's happening here in California. As the show tells you, let's see, we'll want to discuss a little bit of her book, and the title of her book is California's Water Crisis, as opposed to one of the many other books that she's authored. And she really has she is something else. She is a go-getter and a powerhouse, and and just abundance of information. To bring us all together under the same platform, I'm going to give you a short refresher, a little refresher course. The Earth's atmosphere, also known as the ionosphere, is like a thick soap bubble, a membrane, an electrically charged shield surrounding the Earth and protecting life and all life forms from deadly solar radiation. This atmosphere is essentially for the survival of life on Earth, and the last thing we want to do is damage it. Without the ionosphere, you, me, and all life on Earth will be fried. Remember this when I begin to talk about HAARP. This is just another fact of the interworking intricacies that cannot be intelligently explained outside of an intelligent creator. A watch parts shaken in a bag for 1 trillion years could never assemble itself into a working timepiece. Neither could the magnificent, fluent interaction of the Earth with living vegetation, insects, sea creatures, animals, and the like, as well as human beings, each universals or universes within themselves, properly assemble themselves within a universe that involves such a precise, perfect precision that, as the watch, if just one of the gazillions of elements were missing or inactive, the entire universal process would be flawed, which has no inherent intelligence, capability of correcting itself, and would therefore eventually die out as all other dead planets in the universe today. Now, I said that to set the stage because what we're about to go into is very, very intricate, but very, very essential. In 1912, Nikola Tesla, a visionary genius, developed alternating current, high-frequency radio technology, and free energy. He experimented with both high and low frequencies and electromagnetic waves. He discovered ways to tame the sky as well as make atmosphere glow whenever and wherever he chose. Through his discoveries, he was able to power an entire city free. Yes, absolutely free. He envisioned altering the weather, developing shields around the Earth to protect it from meteorites and missiles. He discovered by using electronic frequencies that he could split the Earth in two. Now, John D. Rockefeller, that's the daddy, that's the first one, approached Tesla to capitalize on his research. Tesla refused to charge people for things that were free. Rockefeller denigrated Tesla's character, had him committed into a mental institution, stole his experiments, and Tesla eventually died homeless and penniless. There are patents today that make Tesla's ideas reality. And one of the most earth-shaking is the blueprint for HAARP. That's High Frequency Active Aurora Research Program. That operates today under the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Air Force, and the University of Alaska. Again, it's called HAARP. It's H-A-A-R-P. And believe me, angels don't play this harp. To set the stage for my guest, Orlean, I'm going to play a number of clips. The first one is Rosalind Peterson, a good friend of Orlean's, speaking before the United Nations about geoengineering. Some may better know this process as chemtrails. Now, I sent the entire speech to those who were on my email list about a year, maybe a year and a half ago. But here's Rosalind before the United Nations.
The other issue is that a lot of times we're talking about mitigation for climate change. It's rather an undefined term at this period of time. And so what happens is that many times we're talking about artificially putting chemicals like sulfur or particulates into the atmosphere in what they call geoengineering schemes to reduce and help the planet, supposedly, but help the planet to not go through such a tremendous global climate change and to mitigate global warming. However, the incidence of putting chemicals into our atmosphere is going to change and impact agricultural crop production. And if you take and you put up into our skies chemicals to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the earth, you are going to begin to reduce crop production. Studies at the University of Illinois on corn crop production show reductions. Without the process of photosynthesis, whereby plants from direct sunlight gain the energy to grow, to produce crops, we are going to find ourselves, if we mitigate in that direction, impacting the crop production not only here in the United States, but worldwide. One of the things that is impacting crop production right now in the United States and reducing photosynthesis and also impacting the ability of solar power panels to generate the type of power that they should is persistent jet contrails. NASA talks about persistent jet contrails as exacerbating global warming because they trap warmth in the atmosphere when they produce cirrus and man-made clouds. NASA also talks about that that these aircraft leaving persistent contrails are changing our climate. And when they change our climate to the degree that one jet can leave a persistent jet contrail which will spread across our skies from what this picture up here on my left on the screen looks like, which is a trail left by a jet, that trail can expand to 4,000 kilometers and last for 20 hours. This was unheard of in the early 60s and the 70s, and it wasn't until the late 1980s that there was a change and we started to have persistent jet contrails that persist. NASA studies show that part of our global warming problem could be attributed to these types of contrails and the jets that leave them. So one of the issues as we go through is, how do you like your skies, natural or man-made? And right now we are making man-made clouds, and this is trapping warmth in our atmosphere. The climate change that is produced by these jets, not all jets, mostly some non-commercial, but what happens to our skies is that we start to see the changes. The man-made clouds do trap the warmth, and they increase the humidity. This allows for pests to proliferate, diseases, molds, mildews, funguses, and viruses. This is a man-made cloud, ladies and gentlemen, and these pictures I took myself over Northern California, and this is a burst. This is where a jet left a huge plume, and then this turned in at the end of it to a burst. And this is not normal, never seen before in our county historically, and I was born and raised there. This is another picture.
I'm going to play another clip. I wanted to say yes, Rosalind is from Southern California, from Northern California, up in the Santa Rosa area. So we're going to continue with her testimony here.
The type of chemicals they are using are aluminum, barium, strontium, and these canisters are sent up on rockets, and what they do is they superheat the canisters to create experiments in our atmosphere. The experiments can give you colorful auroras, which they talk about as being wonderful. Many times people think that the auroras in Alaska and the ones we see are normal, but there's beginning to be more and more seen across the United States and elsewhere where aluminum, trimethyl aluminum experiments to make clouds are beginning to impact us. The reason I am concerned for agriculture is that none of these experiments have any public oversight. nor agricultural oversight. Our drinking water is impacted because the chemicals are now beginning to show up in our drinking water. In California, the State Department of Health drinking water tests were examined between 1970 and this year, and we found unusual spiking in barium, aluminum, strontium, magnesium, calcium, manganese, and all of these spiked at the same time in various drinking water supplies across the state of California and also in Arizona. So what's happening with these atmospheric tests is that aluminum, as one example, gets into, with increased pollution and acid rain, gets into the root systems of our crop trees and our trees, and it looks like the trees are dying of drought. But they're not. What happens is that the root systems can no longer absorb the water and the nutrients needed to survive. Many of our forests in Redding, California, and other areas are dying. The oak trees, the redwood trees, the Douglas fir, across the United States, many areas. We believe that these trees are impacted because they cannot absorb enough water because aluminum is going into their root systems. Also, molds, mildew, and fungus from warmer temperatures produced by persistent jet contrails are also allowing pests and molds to proliferate, also impacting tree health and crop health.
That, what she just explained there, I am experiencing myself on my property. We had approximately 15 oaks, huge oaks, this past year. When the seasonal change came, they lost their leaves, but they also spewed abundant of seeds, pod seeds, apparently because they knew they were dying. They have not budded yet this year, so it looks like we're going to lose the rest of them this year, and it's all due to what you just described. This next clip that I'm going to play is Kirsten Megan. Now, she's a whistleblower from the Air Force, and she's going to describe to you what she learned as working with these chemicals, and I'm just going to let her tell it.
I want to say around 2006, I started kind of opening my eyes to how the military wasn't really what I thought it was. And people approached me knowing what I did for a living and said, "Have you ever heard of chemtrails?" Well, I hadn't. And that sparked my interest. So I went online and I looked at chemtrails. I saw a lot of, debunking, a lot of sites that were just kind of calling it a conspiracy theory. And I thought, well, geez, this is what I do for a living. Preventive health, making sure that people are not getting sick, especially in the workplace, and by things that we're doing that can affect, human health and the environment. To summarize it, in an attempt to debunk this conspiracy theory as I thought it was, I didn't debunk it. It literally changed my life. Like I said, this is hard for me because it's not easy standing here and telling my story. One day I was going through that computer system, which if you want to look it up, it's called an Air Force Form 3952. It is the approval of hazardous materials. I was finding tons and tons of large quantities of aluminum, barium, strontium in the forms of oxides and sulfates. And of course I knew that there's industrial processes you may not have heard of, but it's bead blasting, pneumatic sanding, shot peening. There is certain medias that's similar to that is used. However, I had already accounted for that. I would sit and look at this computer system and say, this shop wants to order this paint. I'm going to tie it to a task. We had to know what was being used, why it was being used, tracking it cradle to grave on how we were going to dispose of it to be compliant with OSHA and the EPA. One of the legal requirements in approving these is looking at what used to be called the material safety data sheet. On that sheet, it's going to list the manufacturer. It's going to list some maybe acquired personal protective equipment that needs to be used or some ways to mitigate the exposures. These electronic MSDSs did not have a manufacturer name. They were very vague. They almost looked to me like somebody had made it and scanned it into the system. So I asked the question, what is this being used for? I never got an answer, so I didn't approve it. And it sat there. And then the heat came down. Why aren't you? Are you behind on your 3952s? Only a select few of us did that. So I started asking questions. And at that point, my demonization began. You know, I made my rank. I was decorated. I was a non-commissioned officer of the quarter. I won lots of awards. I had no reason for anyone to attempt to demonize me. So then I get moved over to the other Air Logistics Center. There's only 2 in the Air Force, which is in Warner Robins, Georgia. This kind of carried with me, and I thought, you know what? Should I revisit this? Is it worth it? Did I hit something? Maybe it's need to know. I started finding the same things at Robins Air Force Base. I was now doing some more investigation work. Part of what I did was to use a high volume air sampler to air sample up to, I'd say, a football field in about 10 minutes. I also conducted soil sampling because I thought, you know, if this is real and they are spraying this, it's going to get to the ground. So I conducted air sampling, I conducted soil sampling, and I was getting high levels of these contaminants. When I started asking the question again under a new commander, I never in my life thought I would have somebody look me in the face and tell me, I am questioning you. Is there something wrong with you? You've been looking really depressed lately. You know I can put you under a mental evaluation for up to 120 days. Who would take care of your daughter? Because I was divorced at the time. As soon as I heard that, I knew. It validated everything I ever thought. And I thought, I've spent 9 years of my life trying to protect human health, and here we are violating law after law after law. Just sitting here, instead of protecting the people, we are poisoning the people. And I've never got up so much courage from that fear of being thrown in a cage, because when you're in the military, folks, you're a number. You are a number, and every aspect of your life is controlled. I was so lucky that my enlistment was coming up and I was supposed to re-enlist. I ran and did not look back. And I have been blowing the whistle and shouting ever since. And I left October 27th, 2010.
Now that was Megan, and she just substantiates what we just heard from Rosalind Peterson, and what Arlene is going to tell you too. And now this next clip is I sent it out about I'd say 2 years also ago to everybody who's on my email list, and I called it "What Happened to Julio," and I named it that, and you'll see why. Because Julio was a tornado being started and destroyed by High Frequency Active Aurora Research Program, which is the HARP. And so I'm going to play this clip. And this is a meteorologist who's describing the tropical depression called Julio forming in the Pacific Ocean close to Hawaii, and suddenly is hit by this HARP beam and then begins to dissipate. So we're going to play that clip now.
Hurricane Julio. Everything looks pretty normal. Let me zoom in just so everybody can see better. Okay, here's Hawaii. Here's the islands. Here's this thing. And this is back when it was still a tropical depression. Because what you can see here is there's a HARP ring that forms around it. That's the downburst air. And then after that, it starts to break up. So if we look at, picture about 4 hours later, the sun was going down at this point. Now let me show you what I'm saying here. This dark oval right there, I have to stop it. Okay, back up. This dark oval right here, that's the HARP downburst, the outflow boundary. It's a smoke ring of dry air. It's a roll cloud. When they press that air down, at the edges it starts to rotate and squeeze out. And that rotational motion propagates outward as a clear air cloud, and it also moves at a certain rate on both sides. And now we'll just step through. Now let me mark where it is. See, it moves again, moves again. And now this air is pressing down on top of this tropical depression, and it is smeared out, it's gone. Let me let that.
Now that one, he's beginning to tell you exactly what's going on. Now, when you see it, it's a lot different, but he does it in a way, and that's why I use this. He describes it in a way that you can visualize it, what he's saying. And he continues here.
Now we can see it's gone. But if we go back to the visible wavelength satellite picture for right now, the same time, here's what it looks like. That's what the visible satellite is showing. Unbelievable. And this is fraud. And why would they go to so much trouble to destroy this Julio tropical depression? I'll tell you why. This is to maintain the California drought. Let me show you the jet stream map. Okay, so this is the jet stream map when Julio was still existing right here. They show it as a little low pressure here. Well, Julio was more than likely to drift up this way, get caught in the jet stream, and then be pushed over to California, bringing drenching rains to Oregon, California, Nevada, all these places where they're buying up the private water rights. Okay, so this is the jet stream at the time.
Now this next one is where he tells us where this is coming from. He actually.
But see, what they've been doing is when Pacific lows get in this area here, they squash them overnight. And I've made a couple videos on that. Sorry, they're not very intelligible, but that's what they're doing. It's getting too hot. People are watching this area, seeing these low pressures magically disappear. That's why they did it all the way out here.
And the next one, he's going to give us, tell us exactly where. And I'm sorry I have to do it like this, but I had to break it up in sections so that just to get the pertinent information. But I want you to get a full understanding of what they're doing to us, what they're doing with the weather, and that they are definitely controlling it.
Okay, but yeah, see, here's the oval, and yeah, maybe the oval's more like this. So we'll go up here. Yeah, now we're hitting Gacona. Anyway, that's, there is a HARP transmitter down here on Oahu, but I don't think it's powerful enough. It doesn't have the directivity because it doesn't have enough elements in the array, as in a phased array transmitter. So if we step through again, we see this HARP downburst ring move out some more. Oh, sorry, we cycled through. I have to go to the next picture to see this.
And what he says there is that the HARP actually zaps this tropical depression and does it so that it will not form and give us rain here in California. And that's why we've had this drought for this length of time. I'm gonna let you listen to him one more time and how he describes this thing here. Just 1 second.
HARP began with a congressional insertion in the appropriations bill of fiscal year 1990. In essence, Congress directed.
And I'm playing this clip so that you will have understanding of exactly what HARP is and how powerful this technology is. And they've hidden it from the people. As I've said before in the past, we are probably at least 50 years behind all of the technology that they have, that they keep hidden, that they will not reveal it to us until they're ready. and for specific purposes. So this is HARP.
The Defense Department to explore the potential for using the auroral regions for improving communications and navigation and surveillance. From there, the assignment came that the Navy and the Air Force were to manage the program. It is people from those two organizations that have worked together for the past 7 years.
Applications discussed in the patents included destroying missiles. Communications control and disruption were included. There were some other ideas both to possibly modify weather and finally to lift a portion of the upper atmosphere further out into space where hopefully it would be able to deflect missile trajectories.
What we do by beaming up radio frequency up into the ionosphere, that radio frequency, when it hits molecules of atmosphere, it tends to make the subatomic particles inside move faster, and that increases their temperature. So you can bring their temperature up to 1,600 degrees or so, which is normally what the sun does to those particles at that atmosphere.
The ionosphere of the Earth has got enormous amount of energy. There are 8,000 thunderstorms going on all over the Earth at any given moment. There are millions of amperes of electricity pouring to the Earth from lightning strikes. And HARP could create a trigger effect.
In 1983, I did radio tomography with 30 watts, looking for oil in the ground. I found 26 oil wells over a 9-state area, and 100% of the time was accurate with just 30 watts of power beaming straight into solid rock. HARP uses 1 billion watts beamed straight into the ionosphere for experiments. Picture these strings on the piano as layers of the Earth. Each one has its own frequency. What we used to do is beam radio waves into the ground, and it would vibrate any strings that were present in the ground. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say, that's natural gas. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say that's crude oil. We were able to identify each frequency. We accomplished this with just 30 watts of radio power. If you do this with 1 billion watts, the vibrations are so violent that the entire piano would shake. In fact, the whole house would shake. In fact, the vibrations could be so severe underground that could even cause an earthquake.
While we feel...
Well, you're starting to get an idea of the capabilities of HARP, but not only that, but what they're doing to us. I'm going to do one more thing on HARP and then a little short, quick one, and then we're going to have our guest.
HARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
It is a field of antennas on the ground in southeastern Alaska, so linked together as to work as one giant antenna. It's 360 antennas. Each can generate 10,000 watts. 3.6 million watts collectively. The largest legal AM radio station in the U.S. is only 50,000 watts. But they're not broadcasting out. They're broadcasting up.
When HARP is fired up, all those antennas shoot powerful radio waves into the ionosphere, the uppermost part of the atmosphere. They literally heat it. They create irregularities that allow the ionosphere to bounce powerful radio signals back to Earth.
And when that high-powered beam returns back down to Earth, it not only has the ability to change the weather, and if you thought you didn't hear me right, you heard me right. HARP has the ability to control the weather. But that high-powered beam that is shot up into the ionosphere by this mechanism also has the power to cause earthquakes.
Now I got one more little, you heard it. I have one more little clip here, and then we're going to go to our guest.
This article here from the other day got my attention. It says, severe and strange weather sweeps nation, threatens holiday travelers. The weekend before Christmas, Mother Nature is gifting, or rather clobbering, the United States with a little bit of everything: ice storms, snow, flooding, thunderstorms, tornadoes, and record-setting warmth are all in store. And with this maddening mix comes a massive headache for more than 94 million expected holiday travelers. Unless you're on the West Coast, odds are the weather outside is frightful and complex. To make sense of it all, let us take you on a national tour. So I'm going to just mention the subheadings here. Southeast, thunderstorms, tornadoes, and torrential downpours. Midwest, a flood of wet worry. Central Plains, slammed with ice and snow. And finally, Mid-Atlantic, northeast, weirdly warm. So notice these titles here about the strange weather. Now we are aware.
Good morning, Arlene.
Good morning, Al.
Yes, listen, good to talk to you. We go way back, Arlene.
We do, don't we?
Yeah, way back to probably 1999. Listen, I wanted to have you on because of this great book that you've written, the California's Water Crisis, and then you have a little, do you smell a fish? Well, I definitely smell a fish, and it stinks. What they are doing to us, Arlene, is absolutely unbelievable. Listen, I took up enough time, but I wanted to set the stage because I wanted to cover the aspect of global warming, as they call it, of climate change. And, yes, we do have a climate change. It changes every year, 4 times a year. But what they are doing, and it's apparent, it's obvious that now we can see they are controlling our weather. Arlene, I'm going to let you take it over. Any direction you want to go, let's go.
All right. Thank you, Al. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for all that you played before. It really was very informative. And for anyone who has not yet found out about HAARP, you just need to Google it. It's just amazing. You can see pictures of it, and you can also see a map that shows the whole world, and there are lots of different HAARPs. We're not the only one that has one. There were on this map, there were 14 different HAARPs across the globe, but I understand there's even more than that.
Yes, and I think the one we have in Alaska, or the ones that our Navy is operating, are the most powerful and can do the most.
Yes, I agree. And it was very interesting to hear all that was revealed about this. Well, I have been hearing about HAARP for quite some time, and we actually had a good friend who's an electrical engineer whose assignment was to go there and take pictures of it and check it out and make sure it was functioning. So he came back, and on his way back to Arizona, visited us and showed us these pictures, and I told him I knew all about it. In fact, I had seen a video about it that was probably done back in 1998, and it was called The Hole in the Ozone Layer, because they're afraid that that's what HAARP is also creating, is, with all their powerful energy, they're going right through the ionosphere and creating holes. But I told him that in this video, they actually interviewed the scientist that developed it, and asked him, we've heard strange things about HAARP. Does HAARP have the ability to change weather patterns? And he said, well, technically, yes, but our government would never let that happen.
Well, Arlene, and I want to get into your book, but I do want to say that's what he said was a falsity. And the reason I say that, as you know, as far back as the Vietnam War, that was the first time we used this technology, around 1968, and that's when the Ho Chi Minh Trail, they flooded it. They caused it to rain for 6 solid straight months, where they could not even walk there. And it was really what this is. It's warfare. That's what it is. It's warfare. Arlene, let's get into your book, because you cover a completely different aspect of this. You talk about the drought here in California and another cause of it. Go ahead.
Well, I have various chapters. My chapter 11 is all about what you have been talking about, the weather modification and HAARP, and there are so many different aspects to that. I got started with this whole issue because back July last year, 2015, I was part of a meeting where the water agencies here were explaining to us, who are rural property owners. My husband and I live outside of Santa Rosa on 8 acres, and they were telling us that all of those who had a well would now be forced to go along with their policies that are governing all of the people that are having to jump through all sorts of hoops inside the cities. And we said, but these are our wells, and we paid for that, for the digging of the wells, and this is our water. Well, they were giving various sundry excuses for this. One was to save the fish in the Russian River. We are about 20 miles from the Russian River.
and that's the fish that really stinks. Go ahead.
Yes, and they were saying that if we would stop using as much water in our wells, somehow that water would miraculously trickle back into the streams and go back into the Russian River. This was July. Everyone in California knows that our streams are always dry in July, and there was no way that water was going to go trickling back into the Russian River. So most of us did not buy that. There was also amazing, rigid regulations that were going to be placed on us, that we had to report to them everything about our wells, where the water was coming from, how deep it was, how much water was being used daily, where it was being used, and for what reasons, and allowing them to come on our property and inspect our wells. Well, we figured out this is just another guise. They've been trying to do this for years, to monitor, meter, and eventually tax our wells.
That is the ultimate goal.
Anyway, they told us that if we did not submit this report to them, it was many pages, and to do it by a certain day, and it had to be done electronically. So a lot of these sweet little farmers don't even have computers, but they would not let them send it in the mail. They had to do it electronically. We'd have to go to the library or something else. And I'm the brave soul that said, so what if some of us still think that our well water belongs to the property owner, and this is a long tradition in our nation. It comes from British common law, and we refuse to go along with this. What will happen? And she said, well, if you do not meet the deadline, then you'll be fined $500 a day. And I said, what gives you the right to do this? Is it the executive order of Jerry Brown that has declared us a state of emergency? She said it's not only that, but it's a law that was passed last year, that was 2014, the Groundwater Management Act, that essentially says that all groundwater now is under the ownership of the state of California. And, this is just so absolutely unheard of. Just by a law, they can suddenly do that to all the water. So anyway, that's got my curiosity aroused, and I started writing my book, and it is now published, and the official title is California's Water Crisis, Do You Smell a Fish? And there are many, many fishes to smell.
Yes, there are. Listen, you even cover in there about how they're closing down the dams.
Yes. That's one of the goals they've been having for a long time, and this is what they're trying to do up in Siskiyou County. And I actually found that since the 1970s, they have succeeded in closing down 30 dams in California. But up in Siskiyou County, there would be 3 dams brought down on the Klamath River, the biggest dam removal project they will have ever had. Fortunately, those people up in Siskiyou have really woken up to this, and their board of supervisors, and they have been fighting it tooth and toenail. Their sheriffs are good constitutional sheriffs, and they refuse to go along with this, and they've said that they will form a human chain around the dams, and they won't be able to do it.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Orlean.
So one of the reasons they're trying to do this, and for anyone who has never heard of the Wildlands Project, they just need to Google that, and these people are very proud of themselves as well. This was really created by David Foreman of Earth First, a radical environmental group project is to try to make it so that 50% of our nation is going to be brought back to pre-Columbian wild condition, and for some reason they think that will be wonderful. Well, if you look on their map, all the red part of California is where there will be absolutely no human activity. And if you look at Siskiyou County, that's all the red part. If you look at the Central Valley, that's also the red part. And what they have done in the Central Valley is outrageous. They told Congressman Devin Nunes, and I really appreciate, I received so much information from him talking about the Central Valley. But when he was running for office in 2002, this environmental group met with him and told him that their goal was to have over 1 million acres of the Central Valley put back into desert condition without any productivity. And he said, well, why? And because we just want it to be back into its pristine, natural condition. It was not pristine. It was desert land covered with weeds, and nothing is pretty about it at all. But they have now succeeded in doing that because of the wacky policies that have been passed, making it so that 70% of the water that used to go through the Delta to get to the Central Valley to provide them with water for their wonderful crops, 70% is now being flushed into the San Francisco Bay to provide water for a silly little bait fish called the Delta smelt. And most people think the Delta smelt really doesn't exist anymore. It's already been eaten up by the striped bass. So all they're dumping the water, supposedly it only lives in fresh water, all they're dumping their water into the San Francisco Bay has not helped the Delta smelt at all. And it's just an excuse to bring down the farming in the Central Valley and succeed in their goal that they had of bringing over 1 million acres of land back into desert conditions.
Well, you know, it's amazing, Arlene, because they claim they want to keep everything natural, but we can take the BLM, and I'm going to do a report on this. The BLM is literally stealing the land, and they're not maintaining it. That's the thing. They're not maintaining it. So that's why the fallen trees, they're easily to catch fire and cause the mass loss of real property, and it's a danger to the public too. There is an ulterior motive here, and it is evil. There's nothing, and absolutely nothing that they're doing for us. Everything is to destroy us. I believe they're really trying to push us into the cities and into the congested cities. They're trying to take us off of our land. The same thing with the Bundy situation. And like, I'm not going to go into it, but I do know the BLM. I have a clip, Orlean, of the BLM meetings, and they are literally bragging about how they've stolen people's property. And then what do they? And they do not maintain it, so it sits there. Again, all it becomes is kindling wood and for fires. So anyway, I'm sorry I sidetracked on that, but it's
That's
going.
All right. I do mention, I have a whole chapter on the terrible forest fires that we've had in California, especially during this drought.
Yes.
And the firemen that reported this valley fire that was up in Middletown was so horrible and burned, I think it was over 70,000 acres.
75,000, yes, you're correct.
In such a rapid time, and the firemen said they'd never seen a fire like it in their lives, and it was like the trees were literally exploding into fire. Well, that's what happens when trees are coated with aluminum.
That's what does it. Listen, two things, Arlene. That fire, there were 25,000 lightning strikes. Now, we do know that through HAARP, they're capable of doing the lightning strikes. They're capable of doing anything they want to the weather. I believe this for some time, that the earthquake that caused the tsunami in Japan, there is no doubt in my mind that was man-caused. The one in Indonesia that killed all those people, there's no doubt in that one. They brought it, listen, they built that up took it back out to sea, gathered more momentum, and then shot it into into land. There's no question in my mind that this is all done by HARP. Now people are saying this is madness, this is insanity. Why would they want to do? They have an agenda, and let me tell you, it does not include us. Arlene, go ahead.
You're so right, and that's exactly what you've mentioned. They are trying to move us off our rural land, get us into the cities where we can be stacked and packed and more easily controlled.
There you go.
So that's what it's all about. And also, there's a wonderful attorney by the name of Fred Kelly Grant. We're actually bringing him here to Santa Rosa the 23rd through the 25th. He'll be conducting a series of workshops to try to teach us how to better stand up for our own property rights. He is now representing the wife of the man that lost his life protecting the Hammond family in Oregon.
Yes.
And he truly believes that once they have these red areas designated where there will be no human activity, they've gotten all of the people off their farms, moved them into the cities, he believes they're going to be then selling that or giving that land to the Chinese as collateral for the terrible debt that we owe them.
Sure. And that's
then what's at the base of the Hammond Ranch, as well as the Bundys, is rich rare earth minerals. And they're going to be giving those to the Chinese as collateral payment for our debt. So like you said, there is another agenda behind all of this, and unfortunately, some people are finding that out and letting others know about it.
Yes. No, and we've been ringing this bell for a long time. Watchmen on the wall, blowing the trumpet, trying to wake the people up and let them know, so that we can put a stop to what they are doing to us. Arlene, listen, what I'd like to know is how can they get your book? And I believe that everyone should read this. Every Californian, particularly farmers, should read this book. This will give you an update. Arlene is always on the front lines. So Arlene, let the people know how they can get in touch with you and how they can get a hold of this book.
Well, I just happen to have a large stockpile here at my home. So if they would just like to call me, I would be happy to send them one. They can also go to my website, which is booksfortruth.com.
Booksfortruth.com.
But it's actually cheaper to order it directly from me. And so my phone number is 707-539-8393.
Repeat that again, please, Arlene.
707-539-8393.
And I highly recommend it. I appreciate you sending me a copy to go through. You have so much information in there; it's almost unbelievable. But that's the way you write all your books, Arlene. I don't know where you get the time, but it's absolutely amazing to me to see how busy and how much how you're working. Listen. You gave your number. You gave the best way to do it. We're now running at time. I really wanted to open the lines and get some callers, but our time is running towards the end. Arlene, any last parting words that you'd like to say that would not only encourage us but send us in a direction that we need to go?
I do have a chapter on hope, and I give examples of people who have been able to make a difference, like these people up in Siskiyou County, and knowing your rights and being able to stand up for them really helps. I also, my last chapter gives all of the quotes that you need to know to stand up for your property rights, but also all of the quotes by the radical environmentalists that reveal what their agenda is, and they're really proud of themselves. They're happy to tell everyone what they believe.
Listen, when I play that tape, the BLM, they are applauding themselves for stealing our land. One particularly, these two veterans, they said old men, their land was worth like $40 million, and they stole it for $2 million, and they're bragging about it. So this is where we are. Listen, they have no likes for us at all. Arlene, listen, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you, Al. It's been a pleasure to be on your program. I'm so proud of you having your own radio show.
Oh
I
boy!
think that's
Now
wonderful.
this alone is a miracle.
We
Listen, we got to wrap it up. Everybody want to see peace, love, and God bless you all. I look forward to hearing. You can look forward to hearing from me next week. Thank you so much.